With the NFL Scouting Combine in the rear-view mirror, we have a lot of Buffalo Bills storylines to catch up on today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Monday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, or if you're joining us on YouTube, your first watch every day. And as a reminder, we are on YouTube. Check us out, Locked On Bills. Subscribe and enjoy the video version of this podcast. And I'm hoping this week that we do some YouTube exclusive stuff where maybe I'll have a couple of listeners join me to do some mock drafts. So stay tuned for an update on that. I'll give you that update through the Locked On Bills Twitter account at Locked On Bills. So make sure you're following that as well. Well, it's good to be back home. I actually just landed from Indianapolis. I spent last week at the NFL Scouting Combine, and I'm back at my office, back at home. And it was a great week at the Combine, but, you know, it's always good to be home and back into my rhythm of life here, at least until the NFL Draft, which is like 50 days away. As crazy as that sounds, it is coming up soon. And we've got a lot to talk about. Free agency is coming up next week, and the draft is coming up not too far after that. And then, of course, we got to preview some of this stuff. So a lot to get to here in the coming weeks on Locked On Bills. Now, what I want to do today is catch up on a bunch of big-time storylines that came through during the NFL Scouting Combine regarding the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about Cole Beasley. We'll talk about the training camp announcement that the team made. We'll talk about the coaching staff stuff, if you will. The Ty Dunne piece that has everybody brewing. And then Jordan Davis. We got to talk about Jordan Davis now that he went out and had the most ridiculous combine performance in the history of the NFL, probably the greatest ever combine performance in the NFL. So I gotta talk about that here as well, especially after the comments I made last week. So let's get into it. We'll start with Cole Beasley. The Bills wide receiver has been granted permission to seek a trade, according to Mike Garafolo. And this is really interesting. Brandon Beane did come out and tell Mike Garafolo that no door has been closed, but the opportunity is there for him to seek a trade. Now, I know that a lot of people had the same thought that I did when this news first came through, and it's that I wonder if they approached him about taking a pay cut, and Cole's first response was no. and because of that, they said, look, we can release you, or you can seek permission to find a trade, or, if that doesn't work out, you can come back on the pay cut. And so I think that's probably what this is rooted in, but we'll see how it all goes. The bottom line here is that there are significant cap savings to be had if the Bills do move on from Cole Beasley. It would free up $6 million in cap space. And as we know, the Bills are right up against it with the cap. And Cole Beasley is claiming a fairly decent chunk right now. So we'll see what happens here. I don't think a release would surprise me. That would not surprise me at all. You look at this free agent class of wide receivers. You look at this draft class of wide receivers. I'm sure you guys saw them last week at the Combine. This group is extremely athletic. There are so many good options. So there's some dynamics in play here. And so I think what it comes down to is, can the Bills find a partner that's willing to take on Cole Beasley at the salary that he's scheduled to have this year? And if so, the trade will get done. If not, I expect that Cole Beasley will have the opportunity to test the market. And at the end of the day, there's probably some type of offer that's a standing offer for Cole Beasley that, hey, at this amount, We're comfortable giving you this amount. If you're comfortable with that, come back and play with us. I think Cole Beasley can be a productive player in the NFL still, especially as a slot receiver. What's interesting about this is as I project it to the Bills and I think about their willingness to move on from Cole, to me, that's a sign here. Obviously, they've granted him permission to seek a trade that I think is rooted in a request for a pay cut. And when you asked him for a pay cut, you had to have the understanding that he might say, hey, no, I'm not cool with that. I'm done here. That the Bills did have some level of comfort that existed in moving forward without Cole Beasley. And that leads me to think about Ken Dorsey taking over as the offensive coordinator and how, while we expect there to be a lot of carryover based on Ken Dorsey being part of this system for a few years, and obviously it being Ken Dorsey being Josh Allen's top choice to take this job, but perhaps there are going to be some scheme tweaks here, in that the preferred player in the slot is a different skill set. Maybe they want somebody who brings more yards after catch ability. Maybe they want somebody with more vertical ability. And it's obviously an opportunity to get younger. Josh Allen's one of the most elite football players in the NFL. He is past the point where he was 3 years ago, where you thought, oh my goodness, they have to get veterans for him. They had to go get John Brown and Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs. And it was really important to isolate Josh Allen as the variable, as Bruce Nolan so eloquently puts it so frequently, isolate Josh Allen as the variable and not have a developing quarterback around developing weapons. Well, Stephon Diggs isn't going anywhere. You have Gabriel Davis. You have Dawson Knox. And so maybe this is an opportunity to get younger and reset some of the money at wide receiver. So that was a big storyline that obviously came out. We'll see what happens. But it feels like the Bills are definitely at a place where they're comfortable moving on without Cole Beasley. The second big storyline that came through that I'm really excited about is that training camp is officially back to St. John Fisher. And I'm really excited. I'm excited for the fans out in the Rochester area. And I'm excited for fans in general, because this is going to mean more opportunities for fans to get to training camp. And what an amazing tradition that is for families. And so that makes me really, really excited. I'm definitely going to get out there. There's no doubt about it. I will be at Bills training camp for a couple of days this year, and I'll certainly make sure everybody knows when that is. But I want to get out there and watch these guys and take part in all of that. I've never been to Bills camp in Buffalo. I've been to Bills practices, not in Buffalo, but never in Western New York, and I want to take that in for myself this year. So I'm excited about it for the fans. I'm excited about it for myself. I am a fan, so I'm included there. But it's also something that, as you consider where this team is with all the newness, right? We know there's a ton of new coaches this year. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But this is going to be a roster that I think has some newness to it as well. The Bills kind of held pat over the last couple of seasons, both from a roster and coaching staff perspective, but there's going to be some shakeups this year. There already has been with the coaching staff. And so this could be a really critical piece of this team coming together, getting away, and having that opportunity to bond as a football team. And so I think this is a really good thing when you look at it through that lens, for this team to come together with so much newness from a players and coaching perspective. We don't know the dates yet. We don't know the length. That's all coming soon. But as soon as those dates come through, I'll make sure everybody knows what days I'm planning on being out there. Folks, it's that time of year where it's tough to stick with your New Year's resolutions, but not this year, because I'm sticking with my New Year's resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. And look, these things are delicious. Have you tried the Built Puffs? I actually had one just before I recorded this podcast. This is a very delicious lemon-dipped cheesecake puff. And if you haven't had them, you're missing out. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate, because all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they're healthy for you. They only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So many delicious flavors. They've got coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, and new flavors all the time. So check them out. And if you go to built.com, you can learn more about all the amazing flavors and the new stuff that's coming out. And it's all about taste with Built Bars. They figure out how to make it taste great. Then it's about making it healthy. And I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every single time. Have a deal for you. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the coaching staff changes and kind of lead into some of the thoughts that I have regarding the Ty Dunne piece that came out during the combine. So the Bills coaching staff, as I kind of teased in the first segment, there's a lot of newness to it. I think there's 8 new coaches altogether being brought to the staff and a bunch of guys that are in new spots for the team. So Ken Dorsey is now the offensive coordinator. He was the QB's coach. Matthew Smiley is the special teams coordinator. He was the assistant special teams coordinator. John Butler has added defensive passing game coordinator to his workload. Jim Salgado went from nickel coach to safeties coach. And then the team added Aaron Cromer to be the O-line coach, Joe Brady to be the quarterback's coach, Marcus West as an assistant D-line coach, Jalen Finner, defensive quality control coach, Kyle Shermer, defensive quality control coach, Corey Harkey, assistant special teams coach, Nick Lacey, strength and conditioning assistant, and Austin Gunn, who is a fellowship coach. It's a lot of newness to this coaching staff that had very little turnover over the last couple of seasons. And it's been interesting to hear Sean McDermott talk about it, which he did for the first time at the Combine. And after a couple of years of preaching continuity, he didn't diminish the value of continuity, but he definitely clinged to the idea of having some fresh perspective, which I think is good. I mean, you have gotten close over the last 2 seasons, but you haven't gotten over the hump. And so while you have a lot of your core pieces still in place, maybe those new ideas are part of the equation for this team getting over the hump. And so that excites me a little bit. And obviously, it's going to be interesting to see, how all these changes play out. What does it mean for these position groups? What does it mean for the offense? What does it mean for the special teams? For the first time in a couple of years, we have a lot of new coaches in place, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. Now, this leads me into a tweet from Josh Reed about Heath Farwell, who left Buffalo for the same position, the special teams coordinator position with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this will obviously lead us to the Ty Dunne piece. So this is from Josh Reed on Twitter. He said, I spoke with a source at the Combine last night who said Heath Farwell was absolutely not fired by the Bills and chose to leave for Jacksonville. Okay, well, that's kind of weird, right? Why would a coach go to Jacksonville for the same position over Buffalo, who has Josh Allen? Well, there could be a number of reasons why. I mean, that's obviously a new coaching staff there under Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. There's also something that maybe we're not talking about enough here, in that perhaps Heath Farwell's contract is up and the Bills just didn't offer him and he left to go to Jacksonville. There's other ways that you can switch teams that's not getting fired. Sometimes contracts just run up for coaches. And that was true with Bobby Johnson. His contract was up. Went to the Giants. So let's not dismiss that ingredient. But at the end of the day, if the Bills wanted him back, they could have offered him a contract if that's the case, and he would be the Bills special teams coordinator. He's not anymore. He took the same position to go to Jacksonville, which leads into the Ty Dunne piece. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. I'm sure you probably are. It was a big thing on Twitter. I know that it made some of the Bills podcasts and radio stuff that's out there. And so let me summarize this. And when I say me, let me share with you how Matthew Warren of Buffalo Rumblings summarized the Ty Dunne piece. And then I'll share some of my thoughts here. And again, this is courtesy of Buffalo Rumblings, Matthew Warren put together a nice collection of bullet points here to kind of hit the highlights of this Ty Dunne piece that has everyone in a tizzy. First thing, Heath Farwell told, and this is all going back to the last 13 seconds of the Chiefs' loss in the playoffs. The first one, Heath Farwell told his special teams coverage unit to squib kick, running time off the clock. Sean McDermott said to kick it deep, allowing a touchback and no time off the clock. Instead of talking to Tyler Bass, Farwell went to talk to McDermott, then back to the kick team, and Bass was never told to squib. Levi Wallace lined up outside leverage on both KC offensive snaps, while Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer were 26 and 31 yards off the ball. The Bills rushed 4, only dropping 7 in coverage, and no one jammed any of the receivers at the line. The Bills were trying to stop a last-second touchdown, not a field goal. Stephon Diggs and a defensive player were in an argument leaving the field that was quelled by Jerry Hughes. After the game, when McDermott only said execution publicly, it rubbed players the wrong way. Players and people inside the building are questioning Sean McDermott's management at the end of the game. And because it was the end of the season, the team hasn't gathered to discuss the end of regulation or watch film, leaving a massive void in accountability inside the roster, and many players have no idea what happened in the last 13 seconds of regulation. So that's a summary here. Nothing here is surprising to me. Nothing. There's nothing to panic about because all of this is very normal stuff. We have to be reminded as we want to move on from this whole situation, that was an all-time blunder. That was an all-time meltdown, not just by the Buffalo Bills in franchise history, in legitimate football history. Massive. And the media is pushing for answers, as they should. And I think a lot of that is because Sean McDermott continues to address it the same way. He calls it execution, and he has taken responsibility for the meltdown. And so I think a lot of fans and media want a legitimate explanation as to what happened. Well, okay, we'll talk about that in a second, but it's pretty obvious what happened. Sean McDermott failed the football team, right? Whether it was the kick or the defensive alignment, it was a complete failure. And it's inexcusable because they had ample opportunity in terms of time to discuss things and come up with the right plan. There's a lot of time between that Gabriel Davis touchdown and the kickoff. They called timeout before both of the offensive plays that put Kansas City in range to kick the field goal. It was a massive, massive meltdown. So would it have been good enough for Sean McDermott to just come out and say, well, we had a communication error on the kick, and we wish that we were more aggressive with our alignment on defense? At this point, I'd say yes, because this isn't going to go away. There's going to be future interviews. Eventually, the media is going to talk to Tyler Bass. Eventually, the media is going to talk to Matthew Smiley. Eventually, they're going to talk to Leslie Frazier. They're going to talk to players. And these questions are going to come up. It's not going away. So if Sean McDermott was more forthcoming, perhaps all of that could have been avoided. But as I've already stated, the bottom line here is that Sean McDermott failed this team. Go back and listen to the podcast that I did just a couple hours after that game ended, and that was a very clear message that I delivered. I didn't need Sean McDermott to tell me that it was an execution error. I didn't need to hear anything from Sean McDermott. I watched the game. It's quite clear what happened. And he's taken responsibility. The team should be upset. There should be people hurting. There's massive implication based on the result of that football game for the players, for the coaches, and the organization in general. It's hard to get back to those moments. Legacies are on the line. The Bills, and so many people have said it, just not me. The Bills were going to win the Super Bowl last year if they could have finished out that game. So it's hard to get back to those spots. You can't take them for granted. There's massive playoff bonuses for everybody. And I'm talking scouting assistants. This is $1 million operation, the Buffalo Bills, with huge expectations last season. They were on the doorstep of hosting the AFC Championship game, and Sean McDermott let them down. It should hurt. There should be some chaos, and that's because people care. I went back and listened to the episode of the Go Long podcast with Ty Dunne, who wrote this piece, and Jim Manos. Jim Manos was a former personnel man with the Buffalo Bills who doesn't have a job with the Bills because of Sean McDermott, and he's close friends with Ty Dunne. Both admitted after they went on this, probably 25, 30-minute conversation talking about the piece and, bringing up Rex Ryan and how Sean McDermott was brought in to avoid chaotic moments like this and have the discipline in these moments, and brought in a lot of really interesting conversation points that you can listen to and process for yourself. But those two guys both admitted that there are no lingering concerns about that situation and how it will impact the 2022 season, and I agree. But at the end of the day, players, coaches, the front office people, and fans, we should all be disappointed. And Sean McDermott failed the team in the last 13 seconds of the game. That's what happened. And so if you needed to read that article or listen to that podcast or whatever you need to do to gain more clarity on the situation, it's quite simple. The Bills were failed. The team, the organization, everybody, the fans were failed by Sean McDermott for the management of the last 13 seconds of that football game. There's no doubt about it. That doesn't mean he should be fired. That's not even a worthwhile thought to entertain. But we should be disappointed. And because of the magnitude of all of this, everything that has come since, everything that has been a consequence of the way that Sean McDermott has addressed it, everything that the players reported to Ty Dunne in the piece, is completely something that I can understand why you would say those things and have those opinions. Massive moment, massively disappointed. All of this is normal. Onward. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, and they even have Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. So last week on the podcast, the Thursday episode where I talked about draft narratives for the Bills that I do not support, I spent 15 minutes talking about, maybe more, might have been like 18 minutes, talking about Jordan Davis, the Georgia defensive tackle, and how I was not on board with him being an option for the Bills at pick 25. And what does Jordan Davis go out and do in response to that monologue that I went on? He goes out and has probably the greatest combine performance in NFL history. 6'6", 341 pounds, 34-inch arms, 10 3/4-inch hands. He ran a 4.78 40-yard dash. That is ridiculous. At 341, did you watch it? Surely you have, right? You've seen this. If you didn't watch it live, you've seen it come through your social media feeds. I mean, that is rare stuff for a man that big. 32-inch vertical, that's crazy. 123-inch broad jump, that's crazy. Rare physical specimen, which is exactly what I said at the beginning of my monologue with Jordan Davis. I said he's a massive man with crazy moments of explosive athleticism. Size and athleticism were never the concerns with Davis. It was weight management, conditioning, and pass rush ability. I'm not going to rehash everything that I said last week. You can go back and listen. He's had glimpses of all those things, but never a sustained effort in terms of weight management, conditioning, and pass rush ability. His weight has fluctuated from 340 to 380. Well, good job, Jordan Davis. You showed up at the combine at 341 and put yourself in the best possible position to showcase your athleticism. That's great. 3 months ago, or 2 months ago, in the SEC championship game, you publicly stated that you weren't in good enough shape to help your team against a tempo offense like Alabama. And that the entire point of you coming back last season at Georgia was to showcase yourself better in terms of weight management and conditioning and affecting the quarterback. He's had glimpses of all of those things, but never a sustained effort. Again, my 3 concerns: weight management, conditioning, pass rush ability. Jordan Davis is about to have more money and time than he's ever had in his entire life. And if the best indicator of future performance is past performance, then all of the concerns that I have are valid and remain. The way he tested doesn't answer any of those questions. His combine testing was unbelievable. But the combine is one data point. And I'm as pro-combine as it gets. I love the combine. I think it's a critical part of the process. I value it. But he played 4 years of college football with weight management and conditioning issues with bad nutrition. He's an insane athlete for his size. So why did this man only have 30 career pressures on the quarterback on 603 pass rush snaps with that athletic profile? He was asked to rush the passer. Not playing third downs doesn't mean he wasn't asked to rush the passer. It's not like if you're a receiver on offense and you only were tasked with running 3 routes, and so it's unfair to say that he can't run all the routes because he wasn't asked to. No. Jordan Davis was asked to rush the passer. He had 603 opportunities to rush the passer in college and had 30 career pressures. Scouting is all about risk assessment, okay? You gather all the information that you can, and you use it to formulate your opinion on a player. And people can apply the same information and interpret it differently. And so it's okay that there's wide-ranging opinions here. This is a complicated evaluation. But what I want to make sure as we continue this conversation over the next 50 days, let's make sure the conversation stays healthy. This isn't Joe Marino's position on Jordan Davis versus anyone who wants Jordan Davis. All right? Disagreements are normal. They happen team to team. I got a chance to see the year that Robert Woods came out, okay? I saw the Dallas Cowboys draft board. He wasn't on it. He wasn't on their board. I know of teams right now in the NFL that have a difference of 3 rounds of grade on Breece Hall, the running back out of Iowa State. 3-round difference. All right, so they differ from team to team. They differ with people within the organization. I promise you that there are players that Brandon Beane values differently than Malik Boyd. Right? Or even when Joe Shane was on the team. They probably had different grades on players. There are players that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are going to disagree on the evaluation. And of course, that's going to happen analyst to analyst. We've got 4, including myself, we have 4 full-time scouting members of our staff on thedraftnetwork.com and 2 part-time guys. Six guys. We all work together every single day. And we evaluate players. And the grades are all over the place. And we use a consensus opinion to stack our board. There's a prospect right now that Kyle Krabs has a second-round grade on. Keith Sanchez has a 4th-round grade on. That's how this goes. So let's keep the conversation healthy, all right? Use all the information that you can to formulate your opinion on the player. I'm fully aware of the athletic ability and the size that exists with Jordan Davis. I'm also fully aware of the weight management, conditioning, and pass rush concerns that exist with him. As I work through this risk assessment, right? It's a risk assessment, and I take all of these variables together. I'm not comfortable, okay? I'm not comfortable because I am a big believer that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. And none of those questions have been answered for me. He's about to have the most free time and money he'll ever have in his entire life. And I'm supposed to believe that those things are going to get better. Now, here's what I will say. If he gets to the 25th pick, which I think at this point a lot of people don't expect to be the case, and the Bills make him the selection, you can trust that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane did their homework and they are comfortable with everything about him as a player. Obviously, the skill set, the valuation of the skill set, and his ability to come in and be focused and eliminate the concerns about nutrition and weight management and conditioning, and his ability to affect the quarterback. So that's what I'll say about that. If he is the pick, they're comfortable with that, or else they wouldn't pick him. I will say this, and I said this last time we had the conversation about Jordan Davis. I'm going to stack the board. I'm going to stack a Bill-specific draft board. And somewhere on it, Jordan Davis will be. And that will be a good indicator of at what point I would want Jordan Davis. If all of these players were gone, I would be happy with Jordan Davis. I'll be able to answer that question in a few weeks. And it's funny because my brother sent me a text message on Sunday, and it was a list of 14 players, and he said, hey, what players do you think are locks to not be on the board when the Bills are on the clock? And he sent me a list of 14 names, and I went through it, and I agree. And in that bucket of 14 names are a lot of players I love. And so could there be 9 more that I would prefer over Jordan Davis? I'll answer that question soon enough. But my position on Jordan Davis, really nothing. We didn't learn anything new. We knew he was big and explosive. Now, maybe we didn't know that he was this explosive, right? I mean, this is the greatest combine performance in NFL history, arguably. I don't think anybody saw a 4.78 40-yard dash, and especially the 10-yard split was phenomenal too. But that athleticism didn't help him rush the passer at Georgia. 603 pass rush snaps, 30 career pressures. I want more. I think there's enough questions here for it to be a completely reasonable position for me to have a level of concern about how he's going to fare in the NFL, where all of those things become really, really important. So let's keep the conversation healthy. It's not Joe's position versus anyone else's position. It's about how you take the information, assess the risk, and create a valuation on a football player. And I'm going to see it differently than other Bills analysts and other Bills content creators. Just like from team to team, people within teams, analyst to analyst, it's all very, very normal. So let's make sure that these conversations stay healthy, because I feel like there's some awkward tension that exists out there. And your favorite Bills analysts that love the idea of Jordan Davis, I promise you, we are having conversations about this, good ones, through text messages and phone calls and stuff like that. So just understand that there's no bad blood here. It's okay to have different opinions. It's healthy. It's good. We can learn from each other. And, I think I've very clearly articulated my position on this matter. And so hopefully everyone can understand where I'm coming from. And if you are on the other side of the coin, I understand where you're coming from. And so with that said, at some point I'll stack this board up and see at which point I'm good with Jordan Davis. All right, folks, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed this podcast today. Tomorrow is Herd Mentality. We have a ton of great stuff to get to already lined up. And then later in the week, we're going to start getting into some free agency previews. And then Friday, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to do my mock offseason where I go through and I give you all the players I would sign in free agency. I'll do a mock draft for you, and then we'll do a 53-man roster projection. So Friday is going to be an awesome podcast and show. So make sure you're subscribed. Don't miss it. Rate, review, and share, and have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.